Good evening, everybody. The topic for today's webinar is titled Professionalism and Ethics in Financial Planning Practices. Now, due to the nature of professional and financial planning it requires that a certain amount of regulation is there. On the other hand, micro kind of a regulation is just not possible simply because of the nature of the services that financial planning entails. For example, that once a client goes to a financial planner, is there any other way by which a particular authority can actually regulate the way the financial planning advice is given to the client? That's not possible. There is no micromanagement that can be done. However, it is not to say that there can be no particular kind of regulation. Now, this regulation is actually more of a self-regulation simply because the particular planner would be a professional. And being a professional, he would have some professional standards. He would have some ethics. He would also be expected to, obey some laws of integrity. Plus, also the fact that he also has his own reputation to consider. Because if the client is not satisfied, or if the client, labels him as being not so, just in terms of his dealings, or has some sort of a professional, has not kept to his professional obligations. To that extent, his own status as a professional planner or as a financial planner would be severely maligned. So there is a certain amount of self-check that a particular professional would have in his financial planning profession. Now, in terms of the financial planning profession, now having understood the fact that there is a certain amount of self-regulation that is required, but FPSB has thought it fit to come out with certain professional standards. Now, the reason for these standards is actually very clear because, sometimes, while, adopting financial planning practices, sometimes, one is not really very clear as to what constitutes as professionalism and what does not constitute. So, it is important that, some rules and regulations are there. So, the planner also is able to understand, like, okay, this is something that is unprofessional, right? And this particular act of behavior or this particular attitude or this particular mode of working is not in the best interest of the client, and it is spelled loud and clear. So FPSB has come up with 8 codes of conduct. Now these codes of ethics, as they are called, can be labeled as such. The first one is integrity. Now integrity obviously relates to the fact as how you are in terms of your honesty, in terms of your dealing with clients. Second is objectivity. Now, objectivity, which means that when you are dealing with your clients, there is a certain amount of objective assessment of his needs, and any subjective considerations which may influence the plan or the kind of advice that is being given should not step into the kind of advice he is giving. 3, he should have the requisite competence and abilities to advise the client. 4, in terms of fairness. Now, fairness would in some cases relate to the kind of his fees and to the fairness with which he is dealing with the client. 5th, confidentiality. Confidentiality is basically related to the fact that all the client's information is supposed to be confidential and that should not be shared with anybody. 6th, there are some professional standards that need to be met, which means that for example, FPSB has certain requirements in terms of continuing credits and stuff, and also those need to be looked into account. Diligence. Diligence simply means, that is the 7th one, diligence simply means that a certain amount of hard work needs to be done so that the client's needs are taken care of. And 8 is compliance. Now there are some rules and regulations that FPSB has earmarked. Now those need to be complied with. Now to go in a little detail, right? So for example, integrity has 4 rules. For example, rule 101, to quote an example, means that a member shall not make a false or misleading communication about the size, scope or areas of competence of the member's practice. In promotional activities, a member shall not make material false or misleading communications to the public. Rule number 102 says a member shall not engage in conduct involving dishonesty, fraud, deceit or misrepresentation, or knowingly make a false or a misleading statement. Rule 103, however, says a member should act only in accordance with the authority set forth in the governing legal instrument. A member shall identify and keep complete records of the funds of any property of the client. Rule 104, a member shall not make any statement orally or in writing that misrepresent the services that the company is capable of providing. Right? In short, what the rule of integrity, that is the code of ethics number 1, says that in all your presentations or representations to the client, it has to be made very clear that the kind of services that one is providing should be very clear, and one should not go beyond the scope of what they are entitled to. Second rule is code of ethics is objectivity. Now in this case we have 7 subsets. For example, in rule 201 it says a member should exercise reasonable and prudent professional judgment in providing professional services. Rule 202 says financial planning practitioners shall act in the best interest of the client. Rule 203 says a member shall disclose in writing to the client any limitation of their capacity to serve the client. Rule 204 says a financial planning practitioner shall make timely written disclosure of all material information relative to the professional relationship. Rule 205 says if financial planning services are provided orally, a member must disclose orally to the client the particulars prescribed in Rule 204. Rule 206 says member shall disclose in writing the conflicts of interest to the client. Rule 207 disclosures regarding source of compensation shall be made annually or for ongoing clients. Now, what basically the objectivity is, says that there should be, in terms of no subjectivity or any material conflict of interest should be disclosed to the client, right? And any information that is in the best interest of the client, right, or any kind of advice that is provided to the client should be, as far as possible, put in writing, so that the client is very clear about the kind and nature of advice that is being provided, and that leaves no scope for the financial planner to backtrack at a certain stage that, okay, this is not what I said, right? So the communication has to be extremely clear between the client and the financial planner. Now, the third code of ethics is called competence, and in this there are 3 subsets. Rule 301. Rule 301 says a member should keep informed of developments in the field of financial planning and participate in continuing education throughout the career. Rule 302 says a member should offer advice only in the areas in which the member has competence. In other areas, he must take the help of other professions. Rule 303, a member should have reasonable and appropriate standards for the appointment of representatives. Now, when you say competence, now number 1, the first thing is that the member himself, the planner himself, must have competence, and plus he must take all relevant steps to keep abreast. 2, that if there is some requirement, he should be able to contact other professionals which in other areas, so that if there is some area which he does not have competence, then the client should not suffer on account of that, right? And he should not offer wrong advice, but take the help of other professionals. And if in case he is hiring representatives, then there should be some standards or some methods by which he is hiring representatives which have reasonable competence. Now, rule number 4, which is the code of ethics 4, represents fairness. Now, in this we have 5 subsections. Rule 401 says, in rendering professional services, a member should ensure that prospective clients are clearly informed in writing about the identity of the company, nature of services offered, material information relevant to the professional relationship, access to internal and external complaint handling mechanism. 402 says a member's compensation shall be fair and reasonable. 403 says a member may provide reference, they may include recommendation from present and former clients to establishing the client relationship. Rule 404, a member should clearly disclose to all prospective clients the capacity in which they are able to offer financial planning services. Rule 405, all members shall adhere to the same standards of disclosure and service regardless of the institute or organization they belong to. Rule 407, a member should advise the member's employer or outside affiliations which may compromise service to the employer, provide timely notice to the employer and clients in the event of change in employment. Rule 408, a member doing business as a partner or principal of a financial services firm owes to a member's partners or co-owners a responsibility to act in good faith. Rule 409, a member should join a financial planning firm as a partner or principal only on the basis of mutual disclosure of relevant and material information regarding credentials, competence and so on. Right? Now, similarly, the other subparts of the Code of Ethics of Fairness. Now, basically this Code of Fairness relates to fairness both from the point of view of the client as well as from the point of view of the member, that is a financial planning member who provides services, right? So in crux, that basically that number one, when you are providing services to the client, the member should disclose to the client basically the affiliations of the firm, the capacity in which they are able to offer financial planning services, and his own affiliations, etc., or any other affiliation that he may have with any other bodies, etc. Right? And this he should also disclose to his employer as well. He should be paid reasonably, and if there is any change in his status or in terms of his qualifications, or if he chooses to leave and join another firm, then adequate notice needs to be given to both the client as well as the employer that look, I am going to be joining another profession, so that some amount of time is given so that the firm can accordingly adjust, so that the client's interest is not compromised. The code number 5 relates to confidentiality, and in this there are 5 subsections. Rule 501 says a member should not reveal for use or her own benefit without client's consent or any other personally identifiable information relating to the client membership or the affairs of the client. Rule 502, a member should maintain the same standards of confidentiality to employers as to clients. Rule 503, a member doing business as a partner or principal of a financial services firm owes to the member's partners or co-owners a responsibility to act in good faith. This includes adherence to expectations and confidentiality. Rule 504, members must keep confidential information and knowledge concerning to FPSB India and is not entitled to communicate or divulge that information or knowledge thereof. Rule 505, a member must, when requested to do so by a client, give to the client or another person authorized by the client any original document related to the provision of financial planning advice of which the client has paid. Now, obviously, if you look at these subsections, right, basically they relate that all information that is given by the client to the planner has to be kept confidential. And secondly, with regard to the employer, right, so even if a member has, given financial planning advice, now he is required to maintain confidentiality even with respect to his employer. Now, when I say to respect to his employer, that means that any information or any kind of business that he has done within the firm, right, or any information about the client, it should not be disclosed to anybody else. So he has a responsibility to even his employer, right? So in that case, he must act in good faith as well. And if a client has requested any information or any other document for which he has paid for, then it is the duty of the planner or the member to give that information to the client. Okay, the code of professionalism is the code of ethics number 6, and this has 6 subsections. Rule 601, a member shall show respect for other financial planning professions and related occupational groups by engaging in fair and honorable competitive practices. A member, 602, a member shall not engage in any conduct that reflects adversely on his or her integrity or fitness as a member upon the marks or upon the profession. Rule 603, a member shall not practice any other profession or offer to provide such services unless the member is qualified to practice in those fields and is certificate as required by law. 604, a member shall effect and maintain professional indemnity insurance in accordance with the requirements by FPSB India. Rule 605, a member shall not misinterpret the status of their membership of FPSB India. Rule 606, a member shall not misstate their authority to represent the FPSB India. Diligence is the code of ethics number 7. Now this again has 6 subsections. Now this requires that the information the member should provide services diligently and on a timely basis. The practitioner should ensure that the relationship is warranted by the individual's needs and objectives. A member shall collect sufficient information to ensure appropriate advice can be given. Rule 704, a member should conduct or have access or research on financial strategies and products that may be appropriate to achieve the client's identified needs and objectives. Rule 705, a member should develop a suitable financial strategy or plan for the client based on the relevant information collected and analyzed. Rule 706, a member must take reasonable steps to place the client in a position to comprehend the information and the basis for the recommendations. Right? Now, both in terms of professionalism, that is Code of Ethics 6, and diligence, Code of Ethics number 7. Now, professionalism basically is in terms of the fact that one should not do anything that reflects adversely on the profession, and they should not misinterpret their status. That means that if they have not got the certification as of FPSP, then they should not misinform the clients. Whereas in terms of diligence is basically that you should ensure that whatever process that is needed to prepare an appropriate plan for the client, which includes adequate research or providing services on a timely basis, right, or adequate information, or trying to give the client the best possible advice, all those things need to be taken care of while providing financial planning advice. This also means that a lot of recommendations need to be done in writing. And the 6th Code of Ethics is on professionalism, and it has 6 subsections. 601 says a member should show respect for every other financial planning professional and related occupational groups by engaging in fair and honorable competitive practices. Rule 602 says a member should not engage in any conduct that reflects adversely on his or her integrity or fitness as a member upon the marks or upon the profession. A member should not, 603 says, a member should not practice any other profession or offer to provide services unless a member is qualified to provide the same. 604 says, a member shall effect and maintain professional indemnity insurance in accordance with the requirements prescribed by FPSP India. 605 says, a member shall not misinterpret the status of their membership of FPSP India. 606 says, a member should not misinterstate their authority to represent the FPSP India. Now, basically what this professionalism standard is that you should have respect for other financial planning professions. Second, that one should not do anything or engage in any other conduct that negates the image of FPSP and of the profession. And third, whatever the certification that FPSP provides, you should not misinterpret it in the sense that you should not in the sense advertise something that one is not qualified for. For example, if you are not a CFP, you should not advertise that you are a CFP. Code number 7, that is on diligence, has 12 subparts, right? Now to just take a few of them. Rule 701 says a member should provide services diligently on a timely basis. 702 is basically warranted by the individuals or practitioners should ensure that the relationship is warranted by the individual's needs and his objectives. 703, a member should collect sufficient information to ensure appropriate advice can be given. 704 says a member should conduct or have access to research or financial strategies and products that may be appropriate to achieve the client's identified needs and objectives. 705, a member shall develop a plan, financial strategy or plan for the client based on the relevant information collected and analyzed. 706, a member must take reasonable steps to place the client in a position to comprehend the recommendations and the basis for the recommendations. Rule 707 says that the recommendations must be made in writing, right? And all those plans that are made should be implemented timely, right? Now, basically, when you say diligence, or what exactly it is saying is that whatever steps that need to be taken to ensure that the client's interests are looked after, that means doing things in a proper manner, providing information in writing, ensuring all relevant information is collected, ensuring that you have adequate research, ensuring that information is acted upon and the plan is implemented timely. All these facets are part of the diligence requirement, and the financial planner must act diligently in respect of the interest of the client. The last code of ethics is that of compliance. Now, this has 9 subsections. Now, Rule 801 says a member should perform services in applicable rules and regulations of government authorities. Rule 802 says any conduct by representatives or employees that relates to conduct of the member's financial planning must be in accordance. Rule 803 says a member shall use the marks in compliance with the rules of the FPSP India as established and amended from time to time. 804 says a member must cooperate with FPSP. 805 says all members must comply with the relevant FPSP India disciplinary rules and procedures concerning complaints, handling dispute resolution and disciplinary procedures. 806 says a member who is an employee shall perform professional services with dedication to the lawful objectives of the employer. 807, a member shall comply with all applicable post-certification requirements established by FPSB India. 808 says a member shall ensure that information and relevant documents is securely stored. 809, a member must maintain an effective system of supervision of all representative activities, performance training and recommendations made to clients. Now, if you look at all these code of ethics, it is very clear that all aspects of relationship of the planner with that of the client is adequately taken care of, and there is absolutely no room for any kind of a dichotomy or any kind of confusion, and everything is easily and clearly spelled out. So there is absolutely no way by which a planner, if he looks at these codes of conduct and he follows them, then he would be rendering any kind of disservice to the client. This particular webinar or this particular section is basically devoted to the regulatory requirements of a CFP. Now, to be very clear, FPSB is the principal licensing body for the CFP or AFP certification. Now, basically the delivery structure of CFP is examination, education, experience and ethics. Now, which means that to complete the CFP certification, right, you need to have all these 4 requirements, right? When you say education, now education, they have fixed some minimum qualifications that needed to be complete before one can actually qualify as a CFP. There is a certain amount of examination that is also required, which tests the conceptual knowledge of the client. A certain amount of experience, which is 3 years of work experience, and above all, lastly, that a certain amount of adherence to code of ethics. Now, these code of ethics, as we have explained earlier, these are the 8 code of ethics which the planner must abide by in order to qualify as a financial planner. Right? In terms of the modules for certified financial planner, you have a module on introduction to financial planning, you have a module on insurance, you have a module on retirement planning and employee benefits, you have a module on tax planning, you have a module on investment planning, and lastly you have a module which is on advanced financial planning, which basically ties up all the particular modules and gives you a total listing in terms of financial planning for the client. Now, if you complete the 4 modules of insurance, investment, tax and retirement, then you can qualify yourself as an AFP. Right? Now, introduction to financial planning, is the first module, is there, but there is no examination for this. Right? In order to qualify as an AFP, you can write, once you have cleared any of these modules, these 4 modules that I have said. So, for each of the modules, you can call yourself AFP, for example, insurance, and you can call yourself AFP, risk management insurance. If you have qualified investment, then AFP investments. Right? So, you can put the thing on your AFP. Right? Now, if you, on the other hand, have cleared those 4 modules as well as the advanced financial planning, then you can call yourself a CFP. Now, for each of the levels, there are some benefits that are there in terms of journals, in terms of memberships, in terms of affiliations and stuff. In terms of, there is also something called a challenge status examination. Now, typically to become a CFP, you need to be a graduate, right? And you need to have 3 years of work experience. So you can enroll. You can enroll even if you're after 12th class, but you need to be a graduate before you actually get the certification. Plus, you need a certain amount of work before the final certification is given to you. Now, CFP, realizing that some of the members may already have the requisite qualifications and experience, so they have something called a challenge status, and which is a one examination that you give, and instead of going through different modules, they can give the modules. They can give 2 papers. By which in a single day, and if having cleared those, then you can call yourself also as a CFP. Now there are some requirements. You need to be either a chartered accountant or a chartered financial analyst or a cost accountant, or you may be a PhD or a certified associate of Indian Institute of Bankers or LLB law. Now these are some requirements to be fulfilled before you can actually qualify for the challenge status. Right. In terms of learning, there is an integrated learning approach, self-study. There are some training classes. Right. So what FPSB actually does is it authorizes certain education providers which provide material, and in terms of that, the student can register with those authorized education providers, and in periodic intervals give those examinations and qualify for those for the CFP certification. Okay. To complete the CFP certification and to maintain his CFP certification, he needs to have every 2 years 30 hours of continuing education to call himself a CFP. So the reason for this, having this kind of a certification or this kind of requirement, is so that the member keeps himself abreast of all developments that are happening in this field. In all, FPSB has come out with a complete, in terms of a complete requirement that no person who does not have the requisite skills and knowledge is in a position to offer the advice to the client, and by this process of examination and education and experience as well as ethics, FPSB is ensuring that the best kind of financial advice is provided to the client.